Can you see it?
I can see it. Once again, David Zook, City Manager from Nibley City.
All right. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for the invitation, and I hope I can share some things from our experience that'll help some of the rest of you. Hopefully, actually, you'll never have to use this information, but what I always say is that's what we do at the local government level. That's one of our main responsibilities, really, is to respond to emergencies. So more than likely, you will have an emergency happen in your community, and you'll have to communicate with your public about what's going on. And that's what I'm going to focus on today, is not necessarily the mechanics of what we did in dealing with the emergency, but primarily what we did to communicate with our public during this emergency. So I'd like to start with a quick video of what we dealt with, and so I'm just going to play this news report from a couple years ago when we went through this.
Don't really know how important it is until you don't have it, and that is what's still going on up in Cache County. City of Nibley's spring water has been contaminated with diesel fuel. We told you about the spill yesterday, but the water is still not safe. In fact, you can't drink it, you can't cook with it, you're not even supposed to bathe in it. For Utah's Rick Aaron went to Nibley to see how people there are dealing with it.
Nibley tap water. The city is saying don't drink it or bathe in it for at least another day.
We believe there was a farm vehicle that spilled some diesel fuel close to our spring. That's our initial assumption based on the evidence we have.
Today, the city's water tanks were flushed for a second time while residents had to get their water from a truck on loan from Logan.
It's been kind of hard having to shower at somebody else's house. But still, I mean, it's inconvenient coming over here, to come get the water.
How else has this affected you the past couple of days?
Just the buildup of dishes and laundry. Stuff builds quick when you don't really think about it when you don't have water. Can't use it.
Roger Park and his family live near the contaminated well. Shower, bathe, got
whether we were supposed to or not, we did. We've showered. So.
And you seem to be doing fine.
Fine. I didn't notice anything at all.
The Cache County School District says that Nibley and Heritage Elementary schools will be closed again on Friday. When city officials determine the water supply is safe, they will tell residents how to flush their pipes. And until they get the all clear, the parks are going to be drinking bottled water. In Nibley, Rick Aaron, Good for Utah.
Okay, hopefully everybody could see that video okay, or at least hear the audio, but that gave you a little overview of what we dealt with. Our entire water system was contaminated, our entire city system. And just to give you kind of a little lay of the land here, this is where we're located in Cache Valley. You can see Nibley here. As you come into the valley through Wellsville, you drive through the edge of Nibley as you're going in toward Logan, if you're going toward Logan Canyon up here, Bear Lake. That's kind of where we are, and if you look at this map, down in the southeast corner of our city is where our spring is and our water tanks, and this gives you a little close-in view. You can see our water tanks in the bottom of that picture, and then where the red circle is where our spring is. And this is a spring we've been using since back in at least the 1930s. And originally this was our sole source of water. Thankfully, before this happened, we installed a couple of wells, and we've installed another well since then. So I'll give you another view. This is kind of a little bit more of a 3D view. So you can see most of our city off in the distance on the top of the screen, and Yates Spring there and our tank farm. So the spring's on the side of a hill here, but another thing you notice is this road, this dirt road that the farmer uses to get through there. And what happened was this was a couple years ago, but April 20th, we got our first complaint, and somebody just called and complained that the water tasted funny. And that happens from time to time. Those of you who run water systems know that every now and then people get suspicious. They taste something. A lot of times it's coming from in their own house, but sometimes it could be coming from our system. So we weren't really sure what to think about it. We did go check it out and looked at the gentleman's house. He had recently done something with his water softener, I think, and we thought maybe it was related to that. But then we got a complaint the next day on the other side of town, and that's when we really started to worry. Once we got those, they're separated from each other, but similar complaint. Then we went and looked inside of our spring box. We have a collection box where the water collects from our spring, and this is what we found. Hopefully you can see that on the video. This is just a picture I took with my phone. You can kind of see my hand there in the reflection as well in the water. So that's the water surface, and it has that rainbow sheen that you see when gasoline or diesel fuel or some kind of petroleum product gets mixed with water, and that's what we saw. And we could smell it when you opened the lid onto on the top of the tank. You could smell diesel fuel. It was really potent, strong. So at that moment, we were pretty upset, and we knew that something had happened. Somehow our water hole had been contaminated, and it really smelled like diesel in our water. And I'm not talking about Vin Diesel, I'm talking about diesel from a truck. And here's something that we found out later, and this really helped us to figure out what was happening. So what you're looking at in this picture, that brick and concrete building off to the right, that's the collection box that I took the picture in. You can kind of see the hatch there on the top. And this truck was owned by the farmer who has the farm kind of on both sides of the spring, and this dirt road runs along the hillside above our spring collection box. And what happened is one of his employees was driving this truck down this road, and it slipped off the side of the road. Thankfully, it stopped here and didn't keep rolling into our building and totally take it out. But if that had happened, at least hopefully we would have known about it sooner. But we believe what happened is that while this truck was tipped here, the fuel leaked out of its water tanks, or its fuel tanks. It had fuel tanks on both sides underneath the front doors, and we think it leaked out on both sides there. We of course did not find out about that until days later. Once we got into our emergency and found out we had the contamination, somebody sent us this picture of this truck. One of the employees who had been there said, "You guys might want to see this picture. This might be what happened." And so what happened is they came over there, they brought some heavy equipment in, they lifted it out, they moved it out of there, but they never told us. They told us they didn't realize any fuel had spilled. Nevertheless, you can see how close that was to our spring, and that fuel was in our spring water in a very short period of time. If you build a spring now, there are requirements that Division of Drinking Water has in place about how close vehicles can get and how close trees should be, and having a liner under the soil to protect it from this kind of contamination. We didn't have any of that. This was an old spring. It had never been updated, and none of those protections were in place. Obviously, a road should not have been this close, driving right over where the water was not too far below the surface. So there were some weaknesses in place that made us susceptible to this, but nevertheless, it happened, and then we had to deal with it. So this is what we did to deal with it. The first thing we did is we had an emergency staff meeting, and we just called everybody in and said, we've got a contamination and we need to jump on this right away. Actually, before that even happened, when I was out there taking that picture with the rainbow sheen on top of the water, as I was driving back to the office from that site, I was on the phone with the newspaper and calling them to let them know what was going on, so that they could help us start getting the word out. And that's one of the things I wanted to say is a lot of times people are afraid of the news media. They're suspicious of them. They maybe don't want them to know what we're working on or what we're dealing with. But I think that's not a safe approach. And I think it's really important that you develop a good relationship with your local news media if you have them in your area, because they can really be a partner of yours. And that's how I viewed them in this moment. I realized I need their help to get the word out. I need their help to tell our residents what's going on. So these are all the things that we started doing right away to get the word out. We went to our website, put something up there, don't drink the water. We have a community alert system, and if you don't have one of these, I definitely recommend some kind of a community alert system. There are several of them out there. The one we use is called Cloud Speaker. There's one called Code Red. There's one called Reverse 911. There are several of them out there, and essentially what they do is you put a message in, and it sends that message out to everyone in your community, or everyone in your database at least. So we did that. It does a phone call, it does a text message, and an email. So we sent those all out right away. And we got on social media right away. We put it on Facebook, Twitter. I have a little note there about hashtags. I would recommend, if you do something like this, that you establish your own hashtag right away. There was a little confusion about hashtags originally because we didn't establish one. We didn't think of that. And so there were a couple different hashtags going around. But if you establish one to start with, for one, that eliminates the confusion, and for two, you'll make sure somebody doesn't do something offensive, or, well, I guess you can't really stop that, but maybe you'll minimize somebody creating an offensive hashtag. We sent out a press release. We typed something up and sent it out to the news media. I think it's a good idea to have something like that drafted already. Write something up. Water contaminations are actually pretty common. I've been paying really close attention to them the last several years since we had this problem, and they happen a lot all around the country. So having a message already typed up, already written, already ready to send out is a good idea, I think. So have something drafted and know who you're going to send it to. Have the email addresses of news media, of people you're going to send it to. And I know a lot of people don't do press releases anymore. A lot of people just use Twitter to send things out, or post it on their website, or Facebook or something. We still did that. We still sent a press release to the news media. We called the radio station, we called the newspaper. So what we did is when we got everybody in this meeting, we just started handing out assignments. And I forgot to mention, up at the top of the slide there, it says Google Drive folder. That was another thing we did in that meeting. I directed somebody to create a shared folder in Google Drive where we could put all of our documents, that we could share them with each other so that everybody would have access to the documents. And I think it's a good idea to make something like that ahead of time, make sure everybody knows how to access it, a place where you can put all of your documents and information so that everybody would have access to it within the city staff. So we assigned people to reach out to the schools and personally call them, make sure, even though we'd sent out all these other messages, we personally called the schools, the daycare centers, the churches, the businesses. We have businesses in town who were serving drinks and food and things like that. We needed to make sure they knew the water was contaminated. And then we obviously notified our mayor and council. My mayor was actually with me when we went out. I happened to be meeting with him that day when we found out about it. So he went with me out to the site, and then I asked him if he would call the rest of the city council and give them a heads up. We also called some of our local cities pretty quickly because we knew we were going to need their help. And of course, we reached out to some state and federal agencies. We called Drinking Water, and we called the state, or we called a couple federal agencies as well. So this is the website. You have to have a good website that your residents use for sharing information. Of course, this is our post we put on our website about not using the water. Facebook, though, was by far our most valuable tool. And I'll talk about that a little bit more, but Facebook was awesome because I think primarily I would say that because it allowed two-way communication. Our residents were able to ask questions, we were able to respond to those, and so many people just are able to use it, so comfortable with using it to communicate. It was a great tool, and I really recommend that you use Facebook. We use it all the time. We post on it every day. We post something on it, mostly fun stuff, recreation things. But when you gather followers there, you're gonna have a great tool available in case there's an emergency and you have to get the word out. So the other good thing about Facebook, as you can see on here, is there are statistics, analytics. It tells you how many people saw it, who liked it, who shared it. You get a lot of really good data, so you know your message is getting out. This is another thing we did pretty quickly. We went out there and then we excavated the contaminated soil, because we were thinking, well, we've got to get that contaminated soil out of there so we can start cleaning this up. You can see how close to the surface the water was coming down to that spring box. The water was really close to the surface, and knowing now, having excavated this, it's kind of worrisome knowing that the water was that close to the surface. We've never used this spring since this incident. We've abandoned the spring, and it's unfortunate because it was a lot of water that we didn't have to pump, but we realized we could have done some things to put some protective measures in afterward, but we just decided it wasn't worth it, and we didn't feel like the amount of water we get from it was worth it. The next year we started working on a new well and got that up and running. Our new well provides 10 times as much water as the spring did, so we're okay as far as the water goes. But we felt like we needed to clean this out, and we needed to test it also. So we took the soil to one of our parks, and we actually put it in the parking lot there and covered it up, and had it there, kept it there until we could do some testing on it, which is another point. If you put some big piles of dirt in a park, kids are going to start playing on it. So that's exactly what happened. It wasn't too long until there was a BMX track going over the piles of dirt. So we had to cone it off and keep the kids off of the contaminated soil. So be aware of that too. But talking about news media and interactions with the news media, we were surprised at how quickly the news media was on top of this. We started sending out this information, and I had already talked to our local newspaper and radio station, and I figured that the TV news media from Salt Lake would be there an hour and a half later, something like that. They were here within minutes. I was kind of shocked, actually, that within minutes of us making this announcement, here was this young lady with a video camera at our front door wanting to interview us. And she's a stringer. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but a stringer is basically an independent contractor who works for news organizations. And she lived locally. She lived here in the area. She had a video camera, and she was able to respond quickly. And I didn't realize the TV news stations in Salt Lake had stringers out in Cache Valley, but they do. And they had an independent contractor who showed up and was here within minutes with her camera ready to interview us. So a couple things I want to tell you about that is, just because they show up 2 minutes after your incident doesn't mean you have to do an interview with them right away. Do your interview when you're ready. And that's what we told her. We said, we'll be with you in a few minutes, but let us get our thoughts together first. We decided that we wanted to go sit down, write out some talking points, decide what our message was going to be, and then we went out and did the interview. So we probably delayed her 10 or 15 minutes while we put our thoughts together. And we went back into my office, and the mayor and I started talking, and the first thing we said is, who's going to talk? Who's going to be our spokesperson? Who gets to go on camera? And our emergency plan, we have an emergency plan, and in the emergency plan it says that the city manager is the PIO. But it didn't necessarily say who the spokesperson is, and that's something that I think is important for you to think about, is just because you have a public information officer, that person won't necessarily always be the spokesperson also. And sometimes it might be more appropriate for a staff member to be the public information officer, but for an elected official to be the spokesperson. Of course, the public information officer is going to help that spokesperson with the messaging and the talking points. And that's what we decided at that moment. We hadn't really been through that before or decided that. So we decided that he would be the spokesperson, and I would help him put together what he was going to say. He ended up doing the interview. I think that was the only interview he did. All of the other ones after that, he just had me take care of them. And we had a lot of them. There was definitely an onslaught of media contacts after that. Every news organization was here knocking on our door wanting to interview us. So I'll give you a few pieces of advice about that if something like that happens. Again, do it on your time frame. If you want to do individual interviews, that's one thing. If you want to actually schedule a press conference and say, we'll be out there at 5 o'clock and we'll talk to you all at the same time, sometimes that's a lot more convenient when you have several coming. And we never actually did a press conference like that. We just did individual interviews with them. But it worked out okay for us. I would also say keep a log of all these reporters, because we had all these people asking us for interviews, and then we'd interview them, and then they'd disappear, and then next thing we knew, they were showing video and giving their report. And there were a couple of times where we had to correct information. But if we didn't have their name or their number or their email or something, it was kind of hard to track them down to correct information. So make sure you get their contact information, and bring in another public information officer if you need it. In a lot of areas around the state, there are public information officers. There's a statewide organization of public information officers. I would definitely recommend that you get involved in that group if you're not already. And there are trained public information officers you can reach out to. Ideally, though, you'll have a relationship with the public information officers in your region, from your neighboring cities, from the county, other public safety agencies. Build those relationships. And this is something that I did not have at the time. I had a public information officer from an agency nearby come and offer assistance. And unfortunately, we didn't really know each other, have a good relationship. And so it was a little rocky there for a little bit. And if we had already established that relationship, it could have been much better, and I could have utilized that assistance a lot better if I had established that relationship already. And then another thing is you want to monitor what they're saying too, because there were a couple times where reports got put out that were incorrect. And for example, at some point, the public was told that it was okay to drink the water, and it wasn't. It was still contaminated. We had not given the all clear, but people were reporting that it was okay, so we had to reach out to them right away. So we had one of the other PIOs that reached out to me was from Logan Regional Hospital, and he offered to monitor social media for us. So he was doing that for us and keeping an eye on what was going on social media. And you definitely want to assign someone to do that, because things can really get out of hand quickly on social media if you're not on top of it. And another thing he did is he shared our Facebook post. So not only did it go to all the people who were already following our page, but it went to all the people who were following his page. And then on top of that, he did a paid advertisement, which actually pushes it out to people who maybe weren't necessarily following you. And that's something that I would recommend also. If you really need to get the word out, you can pay for a Facebook ad. They're super cheap. It's really only a few dollars, and it gets out in front of a bunch of other people. If you remember, our original post only had like 5,000 people it showed up in front of. We have 7,000 people in our city. We only have about 1,800 homes in our city. So our first one went out to almost 6,000 people. This one that he boosted went out to almost 10,000 people. So that's a really good tool, I think, is to use the Facebook app and advertising. So that kind of leads into talking to our citizens and dealing with citizens and their inquiries. You need to make sure you keep your staff up to date, because everybody needs to be in the loop of what's going on. And we did that with regular meetings and emails, and eventually we just started posting on our website, and we told all of our staff the latest information will be on our website. Check there and refer citizens to that website, and that's where you can stay up to date. Because we had staff members answering phone calls, helping walk-ins, and we also logged all of our citizen inquiries on that Google Drive. We created a document of all the inquiries and the questions. And so if you have some kind of a customer relationship management software system, maybe you want to use that. But if nothing else, get a pad and paper and just keep track of what people are asking about. That was helpful for us to see what the questions were, because then we knew what kind of information we needed to put out. Because if some people were asking it, probably other people were wondering. And then another really important thing is to make sure you respond on social media, because we had several rumors start on social media that this had been going on for years, or that we knew about it. All kinds of crazy conspiracy theories will pop up in a situation like this. And we jumped on them right away, and people were really thankful for that. This is the next day, and you can see us on there answering questions, giving updates. And the other thing I want you to notice is the people loved it. You see their responses. They're all, thank you, you rock, you guys are awesome, thank you so much for the hard work. They were really appreciative of us giving them tons of information. Our policy was maximum disclosure, minimum delay. We did not want to keep anything from our residents. We told them everything as soon as we knew it. And they loved that. They were so happy, and that really built trust with them, because if you don't tell them or you don't respond, they're left to just wonder, and you don't want them doing that, because they're going to think of all kinds of interesting conspiracy theories or who knows what. So we were really open with them, constantly giving updates. And what I would recommend, if you're in some kind of emergency, is at least every day give updates, if not multiple times per day. On Facebook, we had little updates periodically throughout the day. On our website, we would do updates at least every day, sometimes several times a day. Like I said, whenever we had new information, we put it out there as soon as we had it. And we also had a lot of people in the community who helped us. We had some volunteers from local churches come and say, what can we do? We gave them flyers. They went out and passed out flyers. We had them make announcements in churches. We also made sure we reached out to our Spanish-speaking population, because we do have a pretty good-sized Spanish-speaking population in our area. And so we put out our messages in Spanish also. We did that in print, on the radio. We reached out to the Spanish language radio stations, Spanish language churches, and on the phone, we had people who could answer the phone who spoke Spanish, and we had stuff on our website in Spanish. So that's an important thing to think about too, is do you have other populations who might be more difficult to communicate with in your emergency? And not just because they speak another language, but maybe because of age, because of disability, because of proximity or lack thereof. So we really try to think about who needs to know this and how do we get the message out to them. So you can see on our website, what we did is we had updates what day and what time. So like on Sunday, we did a first thing in the morning update at 9 a.m. and then later in the afternoon we did another update at 4, and then Monday morning again at 9 a.m. Gave everybody what the latest update was, and we're constantly updating that so that people were always in the loop and knew what was happening. Just to say a little bit more about our community alert system, our utility manager is who normally takes care of this, either our utility manager or a recreation director, because they're the ones who use it the most. They send out messages about utility outages or utility bills or recreation events. So this was our utility manager at the time. And you can see on his screen, our community alert system gives us some pretty good reporting back, and it tells you how many text messages went through, how many emails went through, how many phone calls went through, if it went to voicemail. Gives some really good feedback so that we knew the message was getting out there. So the other thing we did during this emergency is we really pushed people to sign up for our community alert system, because not only did we use it for our initial announcement to get the word out, but we used it throughout the event to keep people up to date on the latest status. So we were encouraging people to sign up through the various communication channels. we're telling people, sign up for our community alert system and you'll get immediate text messages and phone calls and emails of the latest information. So during this process, we had 700 residents sign up for our community alert system, which was great because we now have a really good database. We had a good database to start with, and it just got even better throughout this process. The same thing with our Facebook followers; they went way up. Twitter followers, we really increased our following. We were pretty new at using all of those when this happened, and we didn't have a big following. But again, I just want to mention how valuable Facebook is. It was so valuable and really helped with our PR. We would share pictures of what was going on. So this was probably our most shared and commented on photo or Facebook post, because we had a picture of our public works guys. They were having a briefing right before they went out to flush the lines, and we took this picture and put it on there. And we just said, make sure you thank these guys, because they've been out there. They hadn't slept. They were working around the clock. They were working hard. And we had people from other agencies too. We wanted to just give them a shout out. And everybody just jumped on the bandwagon too and was thanking them. We got so many comments and likes and shares and a ton of positive exposure. And the other thing is we were leading that by saying, hey, here's a picture, give them some gratitude. And so we were inviting people to express gratitude, which people did, and which is way better than the opposite. And so we were able to stay on top of that. We really were so lucky that our residents were really patient with us throughout this. We had a couple of people who posted things, and like one guy posted kind of an angry comment. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. He posted this angry comment on Facebook. Well, I was in the office working on this thing, so I called him. He was kind of surprised, but I called him right away and I said, hey, I just want to clarify the information. And he didn't post any more angry comments after that. This was a post that I posted during the emergency as we were dealing with that. I just wanted to thank everybody on Facebook for helping us get the word out and for sharing. So this says, when this started, we only had 300 likes on our Facebook page. So like I said, we were just getting started with building it. So it doubled just in the first couple days of this event. And you can see on there that our post reach was over 33,000, almost 34,000 people that had seen our posts through Facebook. And like I said, our population is only 7,000. So this had a really huge reach. We had tons of interaction too. If you can see on there, over 4,000 people had liked, commented, clicked, or shared our page, and over 10,000 clicks on our post. Just this is another good thing about Facebook too, is you can see what's happening, and they give you really good analytics. Here's a graph that kind of shows the activity and the spike. We didn't have a lot going on with page likes or new likes, but you can see that something was definitely happening around the 22nd, 23rd, 24th of April that year. It's great. You get really good insights, and you can see what's going on and how well things are working. I mentioned already paid Facebook ads. They're super cheap, really valuable. It helps you boost that. And then we use Facebook also to thank our community, because we had people in our community showing up. Like, we had this one business, and they showed up with food for our first responders. Lee's Marketplace showed up with a ton of water. You can see here they are. So we took a picture. When they showed up with all this water for our residents, we took a picture of it. We put it on Facebook. We shared it. They shared it. It just helped to really build goodwill between us, our business community, and our residents. And it made more people want to come donate to us because they wanted free advertising that we just gave to Lee's. So more people started showing up and bringing us stuff because they saw that Lee's got this great coverage and made them look good. So more people started showing up with donations after that. Another thing, we started providing water to our residents. And I really want to give a shout out to Logan City. They were amazing. They were so awesome in helping us. In that news video, you saw the big water tanker. That belongs to Logan City. And they just showed up with it. We didn't have to ask them. They just, when they heard about what was happening, they washed it out, filled it up, and brought it over here. And not only that, they came and set it up in one of our parking lots, and it happened to be a dirt parking lot. They realized it was starting to get muddy. They came with a load of rock and put the gravel down so that the residents didn't have to go through the mud from the water, and they were just so amazing. They helped us with so many things during this. And so I just want to say that maintain good relationships with your neighbors, because you might need them someday, your neighboring cities. And it was really a great experience, and really we had so many cities who helped us. Hyde Park was another one. It's a smaller city, but their mayor called and said, what can we do? We don't have a lot of resources, but if we can help you, we're there. And they did. They sent a public works staff member to help us. And so anyways, we set up watering stations. We had that tanker. We had bottled water. We delivered water to all the schools. We didn't have enough bottled water to give to everybody in the community, but the watering tank and other watering stations that were set up in neighboring communities were enough to provide for everybody. The bottled water, we had an initial rush for that, and we realized we weren't going to have enough for everybody. So we reserved that for the elderly, the schools, things like that. And we actually went and delivered to those places. This is some of the signage. Again, this was Logan City put this up. I believe this was their sign. There's their water truck they brought out, and you can see the rock they put down. This is, we had to put signage out, and we had to control people who were coming and picking this up. So we created like a drive-through thing. You can see we're actually flushing one of our fire hydrants there. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. We took water to our schools, delivered it to them. They actually had to shut down the schools, as you heard in that news story. The schools were shut down, but then they did reopen, and we brought them drinking water. So this is another thing. We did not communicate the best with our residents. Once it came time to flush, once we got our tanks cleaned out, we had to flush all of our pipes throughout our entire city to get the contaminated water out. So here's an important point. If you ever have contamination, the solution to pollution is dilution. You've got to dilute that water and flush and flush and flush. So unfortunately, I had been through this a couple other times. This is actually the third time I was involved in a water contamination emergency in my 20 years of local government experience. And so I knew that diluting the water was what we had to do. So and flushing. So we put the word out to our residents that it was time for them to flush the pipes in their houses. We had gone around, we'd flushed our tanks, we'd flushed our fire hydrants, our main lines, all of that had been flushed, and then we wanted them to flush. So we knew that it was going to be a problem with our sewer flow. And you can see here what our normal peak sewer flow is, about 300 gallons per minute. Like I said, we have a small city, it's not too much. But this is what happened when we put the word out that everybody needed to flush their pipes in their house. We did do it in a phased manner. We asked everyone in different quadrants. We split up the city into quadrants and asked each quadrant to flush at a different time. Well, that didn't really go very well. Everyone flushed at the same time. Nobody waited their turn, they just did it. So if you ever have to do something like that, don't tell everybody. Only tell the people you want to flush at each particular time. Because you can see our flow quintupled. Thankfully, it did not overwhelm our system. We were still able to handle it barely, but it almost got ugly. The good thing was it was mostly clean water that was being flushed through there. Because nobody, you can see the couple days before that there was almost nothing going through our system because nobody was using the water. So that was a little scary, but definitely a lesson to make sure if you're going to flush that you communicate with your residents and you consider the impacts on your sewer system if you have one. So afterward, we felt like we had to do some public relations repair too, because This has been a stressful event. Even though everybody was really nice and patient with us, we actually did a community event. We did a big dinner. It was a thank you event where we invited the community. We invited all of the other agencies who had helped us, which was a ton of agencies. We invited everybody. We created this commemorative coin, and we handed it out to everybody as a thank you. And our residents, we waived their water bills for that month because of the trouble. They had to flush. They weren't able to use it for a few days. Then they had to flush and dump a bunch of water down the drain. So we just waived their whole water bill for that month. We paid back our partner agencies. Here's the coin. Here's the coin that we made and handed out to people. So the agencies who contributed stuff, we said, send us a bill. If we get reimbursed for this, we'll reimburse you. And we went and delivered those checks with a thank you. We did a newsletter article as a follow-up, just thanking everyone for their patience. We got thank you letters from our residents. We went and visited people. This was a stack of thank you letters that we got, was delivered to our city hall during the event, actually, just thanking our staff and first responders for helping. And then we personally went and visited several of the people who helped us. This was Chemtech. They did all of our water testing during this, and they were working around the clock to turn around our testing of our samples. So we went, we gave them a thank you. We brought them a big thing of licorice and a thank you card, and just personally thanked them for helping us, which we felt like was an important thing, because they did, a lot of people went above and beyond and helped us with this emergency. So here's some key takeaways of things that we would recommend you prepare for the day that you have something like this happen. The first thing is you need to plan ahead. You need to make sure you have an emergency plan, that people know what their roles are, that people have been through the training, that they know what the terminology is, what the processes are, that you have supplies, that you've written those press releases or those announcements ahead of time, that you have the contact list. Make sure you record and share information, and keep track of the media inquiries, give status updates, talk to the media on your terms, like I said. Wait till you're ready to talk to them, and then keep track of what they're saying. Read the reports, watch the video reports, see what's going out on social media, and make sure you're ready to respond to those if they're sending out incorrect information. Have a dedicated PIO, maybe more, maybe somebody assigned as a support person even. Build those relationships with other public information officers in your region. Definitely keep your your elected officials informed and your public, because that's who we work for, and if they don't feel like we're doing a good job for them, then we're not going to have a job after this. So make sure you keep them informed and up to date. Respond to all the inquiries, like I said, especially if it's somebody starting some bad rumor. You want to make sure you squash that right away. Another thing is social media. Definitely use social media. If you're not using it now, use it. If you're using it now, use it more, just so you can be more comfortable with it, so you can get more followers, so you get more residents following you on social media. And then, like I said, when you do that, use it to praise people, to thank people, to celebrate positive things that are happening even in the middle of your emergency. And use the ads, use the data, use it frequently, use hashtags. And then use other resources too, other agencies, your residents, your local businesses. Make sure you have a good relationship with all those people beforehand. In the middle of an emergency is not the time to introduce yourself to someone you need help from. So make sure you build those relationships and you know people and they know you and they're willing to step in and help you out. And they will be, because they'll be a friend of yours already. Take pictures and videos of everything. We tried to do that. We didn't do as good of a job maybe as we could have, but document everything, and especially make sure there's an adequate investigation of whatever happened. We tried to get the state to come in and do an investigation. They actually came out for one day, gathered some evidence, and then told us they weren't going to do it. I don't really understand why that happened or what, but we should have immediately jumped on the county attorney or somebody else right away and get somebody to do an investigation for us. Because afterward, the lawsuit that followed, we didn't have a very strong case because no independent agency ever came out and did an investigation and had their own evidence. So it was really our word against the farmer in that case, and it made our lawsuit very difficult afterward. We ended up settling a couple of years later, but it didn't come out as good as we would have liked it to, and it could have been different if we had a good investigation and evidence documented in the right way. So if it's something that has any chance of going that way, make sure you document everything and get an independent agency, whether it's law enforcement or a regulatory agency or somebody, to come in and document things. And then the last thing I would say is make sure you say thank you to everybody, because hopefully they'll be willing to help you the next time you need their help, and you probably will. Like I said, that's what we're in the business of doing as local government, is responding to emergencies. We are the first responders, and more than likely we will have another emergency, and we're gonna want our friends to be by our side the next time something happens. And so make sure you say thank you to the people that helped. And that's the end of my presentation, and just gonna open up to any questions now.
Wow, David, what a great presentation to kind of take us through. When something bad happens, you got to be ready. If you have questions, folks, type those into the Q&A box or the chat box. Should be on the right-hand side of your window, and you can ask those questions. Yeah, and these emergencies always happen at a convenient time, isn't that right?
Yeah, that never happens in the middle of the night, especially.
Yeah. So as we're waiting for those questions, I had a couple of things that kind of occurred to me as I was going through. How did you think to cover every angle? You know, you talked about ensuring that elderly or other sensitive populations had the bottled water. How did you think about, or how did you come up with that? The Spanish-speaking population. How did you come up with that in an emergency?
Well, I'd like to say that we thought of every possible need in our very first meeting, but we didn't. We did think of a lot when we had that first meeting, and that's why I brought everybody in there. And we don't have a huge staff here. We're a small city. So we brought everybody we had in right away and just started saying, okay, who's going to need to know about this? But some of them just came up as the emergency unfolded, where we had a Spanish-speaking resident call and needed help, and that's when we realized, oh, we should probably do more to help get the word out to that population. And then and the same thing with all the other ones. Most of them we thought of in our initial brainstorming, but some of them did come up as it unfolded. I think I saw one question pop up about which community alert system we use. We use one called Cloudspeaker. It's put out by Parlant Technologies, but it's called Cloudspeaker. And like I mentioned, there are a couple other ones. There's one called Code Red. Our Cache County actually uses that one. I think Logan City uses that one. There's one called Reverse 911. There are several out there, but we use one called Cloudspeaker. Jason, I can't see the questions on my side.
I'll feed those to you. How much did you spend on to boost Facebook posts?
It was cheap, like I think $20 or something. Usually when we boost Facebook posts, it's $10 or something, and it gets it to more than the population of our city for that much. It's really cheap.
Here's a great question. Rob asked, how did you work to ensure employee safety during this crisis? Was it already a part of your culture?
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing I would say the biggest problem we had related to employee safety during this was our employees were so dedicated that they refused to go home. This thing went on for a few days, and we had people working here for like 3 days straight. And I finally had to order people to go home and go get some sleep. So that was something that we've actually talked about that a lot since then. And I have an awesome crew. They are amazing people. They're such hard workers. They're so dedicated that they were willing to sacrifice and do whatever needed to be done to get the job done, including not even going home and going to sleep. So that was the biggest issue. And so we've implemented some procedures since then. We actually have things here where people could sleep here if they needed to. We have like cots and sleeping bags and pillows and things like that. And the other thing we did, one of our employees in our emergency plan had been assigned to make sure employees' families were taken care of. And so he reminded us of that in the middle of this emergency, was that, hey, my job is to make sure the families are taken care of. And we had several families of employees who lived in our city. So the mayor and I went, we personally visited them, we brought them a case of water, we made sure they're okay, because they hadn't seen their husband in 2 days. So those are a couple things we did.
That's great. Here's an interesting question. Aaron asked, did you get any pushback for your thank you event or the commemorative coin? She said, the cynical part of me says people would say you're celebrating what was a bad situation.
No, we didn't get any negative pushback. Everybody loved it. We had a ton of members of the community show up, and oh yeah, look at that. Jason got
I got
one.
my commemorative coin. Keep it around my desk.
Yeah, people loved it. It was a gratitude event. It was not about celebrating the disaster because we weren't really happy about that. It was about celebrating the many people who came out and helped us. And we brought them up individually. We thanked them. We talked about what they did to help us. We gave them the coin. We handed out some other things. People loved it, and it was a really positive event.
Great. Question on social media. It says, I heard you talk a lot about Facebook. Did you rely on other social media such as Twitter, Instagram? Did you have information on your website so that you could push people to? And I think you answered that, but maybe talk just a little bit about the importance of one versus another.
Yeah, we have our Facebook and our Twitter feeds linked. So if we post something on Facebook, it automatically gets tweeted out. So that's how it was during this event. So everything we put on Facebook automatically got tweeted. We didn't use any other social media at that time. We do now. We have Instagram and YouTube, and we use some other things now. But at the time, all we used was Facebook and Twitter. Yeah,
I think probably an angle I'm thinking on that is you have different user groups based on the type of social media. If you tweet something out, the reporters are all going to get it because they seem to monitor Twitter more. But for the average person and maybe people in certain demographics, Facebook might be more important to that demographic, and so it's probably important to use all. Would you agree?
Yeah, and Twitter, definitely the reporters use Twitter, and I think they had it set up to automatically retweet whatever we tweeted, because the second we sent something out, they were retweeting it to their whole following, which was great. Like I said at the beginning, use the news media to help you get the word out. They are a great tool to help you communicate with your residents.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. A question. How do you keep a current list of residents? With that database.
Yeah, what we used was our utility database, and that's what we do is when people sign up for utilities, we get their contact information. And that's how we built our initial database. And but then once it was up and running, people are able to opt in, and that's what we were encouraging people to do during the disaster, was to go on and sign up on our website for our community alert system. And because through the utility system, we probably have the head of household in there, but people's kids or teenagers have cell phones. If there's an emergency, it'd be good for everybody's cell phone to be in there so everyone gets the text message that says, stay away from this problem.
Yeah. And just, what I've seen, I monitored this event as it was going on, just kind of watching social media and the news media. and I just think you've done a tremendous job in manage or using your social media for other things to get people interested. So it's not the first time they've ever tried to find Nibley City. They're looking at recreation things and other things that may interest them. So when there's something important, they're already tuned in. So that's really good. One quick last question. Why is it important to write your messages ahead of the incident?
Yeah, that's one of the recommendations, because we did not have that. And when the time came and you're in the middle of an emergency, sometimes you're not thinking straight. It's way better to plan this kind of stuff ahead of time when you are thinking straight, when you have time to revise and review and consider. Definitely plan out as much of the stuff as you can ahead of time. Plus, it helps you get it out faster, because we spent, like, when that first reporter showed up, we spent 10 or 15 minutes just figuring out what we needed to say. And 10 or 15 minutes, if it takes you that long to come up with a message, that could be the difference between life and death, especially if you have something like a water contamination and people are drinking it in that time period. You just want to have the ability to respond as quickly as possible, and if you pre-write your messages, you'll be that much faster.
Yeah, great. And you know, a point, you know, we talk about a water emergency happening, but all of these points that David's brought out are just as important in any other emergency. And you think about something, you know, a violent incident, you know, maybe you've got, you know, multiple casualties, you know, a bad situation like that happens. That's even harder to sit down and write a message and have that prepared. So, awesome information, David. Can't thank you enough for taking the time to present this. And to the viewers out there, we really appreciate your attendance here today. We had a question if we can share this presentation. We have recorded the session today, and we'll place that up on our website so people can go in after and watch the presentation. I believe we've covered it. David, final word?
I just want to thank you, Jason. Thanks for the opportunity. And I guess my final word to everybody watching is be prepared.
All right. Thank you so much, David. We appreciate that. Appreciate everybody's attendance. Go out and have a safe day.
Thank you.